Well, Saudi Arabia has been announced as a host of the first Olympic Esports Games in 2027. Despite an initial delay, the International Olympic Committee has confirmed that qualifications will begin in the country this year. For more insights into the leagues, we're now joined by esports commentator Jem Edwards. Jem, great to have you on the program with us. How do you feel now that this is finally happening after a lengthy delay?
Yeah, hi. Excited to be here. And I think really excited that now that we've had the delay, we're back. Things are on the table now. I'm really excited, but I think cautiously optimistic. In the esports corner, the Olympics, esports ness, I don't know what the word is. Their version of esports has been criticized quite a bit in the esports community. So I think I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm excited to see where it's going to go.
So if they've been criticized in the past, as you say,
Yes.
Jem, have they made any difference? Have they made any changes and perhaps listened to the community?
We're kind of yet to see. I mean, we don't have the confirmed games list at the moment, and I think that is the biggest speculation for a lot of the esports community here at the moment, because when we saw the Summer Games in Singapore here, the esports Summer Games trial that they did, it was a lot of games that kind of represent traditional Olympic sports that we already see, whereas your heavy hitters for esports like League of Legends, Valorant, Counter-Strike, all of these games were missing. I know the IOC is hesitant to include games that include violence, but from an esports point of view, those are our most successful titles and the titles that people are most interested in. So I think it's going to really come down to game selection here from the IOC.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Now, what are these esports events that you're expecting, beyond the traditional sports that are being played on a digital front? So what sort of categories are we perhaps looking at when this kicks off in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the past, we've seen Gran Turismo and Just Dance be played. Gran Turismo does have a esport that a few people tune into, but it's not as big as your top 20 esports, I would say. Just Dance, I wouldn't personally consider an esport, and I'm not sure a lot of people in the esports community would either, as much fun as it is as a game. But I think something like Rocket League, which is two little cars that play soccer together, I think that could work if they're games that can't include violence. That unfortunately locks out about 90% of esports games. I think something I'd like to see is kind of something that strikes in the middle. So your Overwatches of the world, and maybe even Apex, they're games that are really colorful and fun. And whilst they're a little bit violent, they're, more PG rated games that lots of kids play, as opposed to something like Counter-Strike, which has all these military aspects and is quite political. I think games like Overwatch are also more diverse. So that's kind of the direction I'd like to see them go in. But I have heard they're not going to do any first-person shooters at all. So maybe they'll look at some MOBAs like League of Legends, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they pick, because they have a bit of a task ahead of them.
Yes, I think you and I can both agree in regards to Counter-Strike. I've played it before. I don't think it's appropriate for the Olympics. Absolutely not. But of course, athletes, before they get there, do have to qualify. How does it all going to work, and how is the qualification being administered?
Yeah, I mean, for the Olympic Esports Games at the moment, it is being run by the team behind the Esports World Cup, which has also had significant criticism alleged at it by the esports community. So I would imagine that they do these qualifications through a similar venture as the Esports World Cup. Now, the Esports World Cup is a really interesting sort of tournament where it's the Esports World Cup, but teams aren't made up of countries. It's kind of a third-party tournament. So it'll be interesting to see how they transition what they've previously done from the Esports World Cup into the Olympic Esports Games in the future. Now, for the specific qualifications, I do think that really highly depends on the games that will be running. It's a little bit different to traditional sports where qualifications seem kind of sensible and second nature. But for esports, some of these qualifications can take months and months, and I think that's something definitely they want to avoid. So honestly, I'm not 100% sure. I think it's a difficult task that they have on their hands from the team behind the Esports World Cup.
So if they're not playing for their nations like you've just spoke about, what are they playing for? Is it for individual pride or pride for their respective esports teams and sponsors?
Yeah, I think definitely for their teams. I think that's the majority of why you would compete in the Esports World Cup. But it's also the highest prize pool of any of our tournaments we have in pretty much the entirety of esports. It's an absolutely massive prize pool. However, I think some people are unhappy with the levels of production of the Esports World Cup, and the host city has also drawn a lot of criticism, particularly for games with more diverse player bases and diverse players on esports teams as well. I mean, in Valorant, we're very lucky to have quite a number of trans and non-binary players, and I'm sure for them, the Esports World Cup is a very difficult thing to think about whether they want to participate in. And I think, unfortunately, the Olympics at the esports at the Olympics, sorry, is going to come with similar hesitation from players and fans as well.
Yep. And like so many Olympic Games, there'll be marquee events like the 100-meter race. Might there be a marquee event for an esport event like this one?
Yeah, I think if they are to include a MOBA like League of Legends, I think 100% that will be the marquee event. For those who don't have esports knowledge, League of Legends is the most popular esport by far at the moment, although Valorant is close behind its tail, but we won't be seeing any Valorant at all at the Esports World Cup or at the Olympics. But League of Legends is, I think, really what the committee should be aiming for. It's a game that's not particularly violent. It's incredibly depth. And I honestly find it similar to cricket in terms of there's a fair bit of downtime, but a lot of uptime as well. And so deep strategies that come into it. I think if you want the event to reach its highest heights, I think including the most popular esport is the right thing to do. But I think something like Rocket League could be a lot of fun as well, particularly because it's so popular with kids.
And of course, in many Olympic Games, there are big personalities. Usain Bolt comes to mind, and Ian Thorpe for us here in Australia. Are there any personalities we should be looking out for?
Yeah, definitely. I think if we've got League of Legends, you can't not talk about Faker. Faker is kind of his own demon of a player. He's been around for a very, very long time. And in esports, players usually have very small lives as competitors. It's kind of similar to gymnasts, where you're not going to see a gymnast compete for a really, really long time unless you're Simone Biles. And Faker kind of is the Simone Biles of League of Legends. He's been around for a really long time, and he is kind of that number one. I think for other games, if Valorant was there, because it's a newer esport, there's more people who are up and coming, and Counter-Strike, although it won't be at the World Cup, has a huge amount of players they could run from. But I think Faker is 100% that player that you'd be looking out for, and all of the players on T1, as they are such a hugely famous team across the world.
Okay, Jem Edwards, it's been really fascinating to have you give us these insights into something many people and viewers know very little about, but something that we'll keep an eye on. Jem Edwards, thank you so much for speaking with us.
No worries. Thank you so much.